The black market smelled like oil and rotting food under a broken roof made of scrap metal. The market buzzed with cruel deals and low voices. Crates filled with half-rotten fruit sat stacked on the corners. Alien traders with long arms and sharp eyes walked past each other making dirty trades. Laughter mixed with anger filled the air as deals were made in secret. In the farthest corner of the market behind a metal cage sat a small alien girl. Her body was thin like sticks and her purple skin was covered in dust and bruises. She wore a torn gray cloth that barely covered her. Her eyes were wide and glowing faintly like two stars, but no one cared to look. She had no name here, no family, no voice. To the traders she was just one more product to sell. A large alien with scales on his face opened the cage and shouted at another trader. "You want this thing," he said, pointing at the girl. "Take her, just give me something for her, anything." The other trader laughed and kicked over a box of spoiled fruit. "Take this junk," he said. "You get the girl. I get rid of waste." The scaled alien looked around and nodded. "Deal." He pulled the girl out roughly, and she stumbled. Her legs were weak and her arms hung limp. She looked at the fruit, and then back at herself. Was this really her worth? Rotten fruit? Just then a figure stepped into the scene. A human, tall, wearing a black coat, stood silently watching. His name was Jace. He had seen many ugly things across the galaxy, but this one made his chest tighten. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the girl. The trader noticed him. "Hey, you want her too?" he asked. "Bit late, buddy. We already made a deal." Just didn't answer. He walked slowly to the cage where the girl had been. He looked down at the crate of fruit, then at the girl again. His eyes were calm but strong. "I'll take her," he said, "but not for fruit." The trader laughed again. "You got money, human. You got weapons. No, then what you got?" Jace bent down and pulled out a small chip. It shined with a red light. A starship repair token, worth more than everything in the market. The trader's eyes lit up like fire. "Now we're talking," he said. Reached for it, just didn't hand it over. He turned to the girl. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. Gently, the girl didn't speak. She blinked slowly, then gave a small nod. Stood straight. "I'm taking her now," he said. "If you touch her again, I won't be kind." The trader frowned. "You're crazy, human. She's broken. She can't talk, can't fight, can't work. She's nothing." Jace looked at the girl again. "She's not nothing." He stepped forward and took her hand. It was cold like ice and shaking. The trader hissed but didn't stop him. Too many people were watching now. Too many eyes. He waved a hand and muttered, "Fine. Take the trash." Jace turned and walked away with the girl beside him. She looked up at him confused. She didn't understand. No one had ever asked her what she wanted before. No one had ever called her more than trash. They reached the edge of the market. Old broken ships lined the path. Jace led her toward one of them, a small silver ship with patches on its hull. He pressed his hand to the panel, and the door opened with a soft hum inside. It was quiet, and warm lights flickered to life and soft music played in the background. He gave her a seat and offered her clean water. She drank slowly, watching him with cautious eyes. Jace sat across from her. "What's your name?" he asked. She stayed silent. He smiled gently. "That's okay. You don't have to speak yet." The ship lifted into the sky, leaving the black market behind. The girl looked out the window. The stars stretched far and endless. Her eyes filled with something strange. Hope, maybe. Jace leaned back in his seat. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but he knew one thing. He had seen her soul, and he knew she was not trash. Not even close. The ship flew through the black sky while inside the girl sat without blinking, her eyes staring at everything. Like it was her first time seeing the home. Jace moved around checking controls, keeping his eyes on the radar, watching for signals because he knew the deal was too loud, too messy. Someone would come looking. He glanced at the girl who sat curled up in the corner, her knees hugged close to her chest, her small hands shaking lightly. She was afraid not of him, but of the silence maybe, or the kindness maybe, because kindness was a stranger to her. Ship beeped sharply. A red signal blinked from the panel tracker. Jace said under his breath, his hands moving fast. He stood and opened a compartment, pulling out a small black box. Inside the box was a tiny blinking light hidden. Inside the girl's torn cloth, he took it out gently and crushed it under his boot. She flinched but didn't move away. Jace looked at her and gave a small nod. "They'll come for us now," he said, "but not yet. We still have time." The ship dived low, breaking through thick cloud layers. Below was a ruined planet, burned forests and collapsed towers stretching far into the dark. Jace found a landing zone between rock walls. The ship landed hard, its legs sinking into dust and ash. He grabbed a blanket and food pack and turned to the girl. "Come with me, we can't stay here too long." She followed without question, her bare feet touching the cold ground. They moved through the dead trees, following an old cracked path, until they reached a broken shelter made of stone and metal. Inside it was dark and empty, no noise, no movement. Safe for now. Just built a fire using an old spark tool, and broken branches. Orange light filled the room, dancing on the walls. The girl sat near it, slowly reaching her hands toward the warmth. She watched the flames as if they told stories she could almost remember. Just opened the food pack and handed her a piece of soft bread. She took it, slowly chewing without blinking, her glowing eyes fixed on him. He sat across from her, tired and silent. "You don't speak," he said after a while. "But that's all right. I'll talk for now. My name is Jace. I used to be a scavenger, then a repair pilot, then a cargo runner. Now I guess I'm something else. I don't know what to call it." The girl tilted her head slowly, like she wanted to say something, but didn't know how. She touched the ground beside her and used a piece of broken metal to draw something. Jace leaned closer, watching her hand move in smooth, strange shapes. Symbols, curves, and lines that didn't match any writing he knew, but he had seen something like this before in an old archive. Ancient language, Illyrian, maybe impossible, but there it was. He stared at her more closely. She looked young, fragile, but her eyes carried age, her movements carried grace. "You're not just some lost child, are you?" he asked. Her head lowered slightly, but she said nothing. She drew another symbol, then looked at him with eyes full of something he couldn't name. Amaya stood and walked outside, scanning the sky. No ships yet, but they would come. Slavers hated losing property, especially when that property could be ancient power inside. The girl stared at the fire again, her fingers twitching as if feeling something. Energy. Jace returned and sat again, rubbing his face with both hands. "We have to move again soon, but you're tired. We'll stay for a little longer." She reached out and touched his arm, a soft touch, gentle and unsure. He looked at her, and she met his eyes. For the first time he saw trust in them, just a small spark, but it was there. He smiled and nodded. "I won't let them take you back." Suddenly, a loud sound shook the air. Far away, engines roared through the sky. Jace jumped to his feet, grabbing his scanner. "Two ships incoming, low and fast." "They found you." She turned to her, but she was already on her feet, eyes glowing brighter than before. She stepped forward, her body straight, her hands rising slowly. Jace shouted, "Wait, don't!" but then stopped. The air around her began to change. Heat formed, light twisted. The fire in the center grew higher, burning blue, then white. The ships in the sky passed above. Jace looked outside and saw their path change. They veered off, crashing into the rocks without firing a single shot. He turned back to the girl, who now dropped to her knees, shaking from the effort. Jace rushed to her and caught her before she hit the ground. She looked up weakly, her lips parting. "Not trash," she whispered barely. "Not broken." Jace held her close, his heart pounding. "No, not trash, never." The old shelter felt quieter now, but the silence was heavy, not peaceful. The girl lay resting, her eyes closed, her skin glowing dimly like soft moonlight. Jace sat nearby, cleaning a metal plate, using it to reflect the firelight onto the symbols she had drawn earlier. He traced them slowly, trying to understand their meaning, trying to remember where he had seen them before. Back in his academy days, long before the wars, he once read about the Illyrian race, a people of light and mind. Their language was lost after the burning of their last city, but these symbols matched what he remembered almost perfectly. He stared at the girl as she slept. Could she really be one of them? If so, why was she found in a black market, traded for rotten fruit? The fire burned low, but he added more wood. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking at the orange glow. He offered her water, and she drank it without fear this time. Something had changed between them after the blast, after the ships fell without a shot. She had protected him, but she had also revealed herself. Jace pulled out his portable translator device. He placed it gently on the ground and showed it to her. She tilted her head, curious. He activated the learning mode and pointed at himself. Jace, she stared, then slowly raised a hand to her chest. Lyra. Her voice was soft and rough, like she had not spoken in a long time. Jace repeated it and smiled. Lyra nodded slowly, like remembering her own name felt strange and new. The translator began mapping their voices, trying to understand the sounds. Jace spoke slowly, asking small questions. Where are you from? Why were you in the cage? But she shook her head, unable to answer. Instead, she drew again, symbols this time, a long line across the floor. She looked up at him, her eyes full of question. Can you read? Jace looked at the symbols again. They were similar to the old archive records. He picked up a data slate and searched his storage. It took time, but he found a dusty file marked Ilarian. Fragments. He placed it side by side with her symbols. Match not perfect, but close. He matched symbol to meaning slowly. Lyra leaned in, watching his every move. Her hand moved quickly, correcting one or two lines. This symbol means lost, she pointed. This one means home. This means hunted. Jace paused. You were hunted. She nodded slowly. By who? He asked. Her eyes lowered. She drew a sharp spiral and crossed it out, then wrote one word in human letters. Syndicate. Diz's fists clenched. The Karn Syndicate. They hunted rare beings, sold them to labs or lords, or worse. If they knew Lyra's power, if they knew she was Ilarian, they would chase her forever. Stood and walked to the ship. Lyra followed quietly, her feet making soft sounds on the stone inside the ship. He pulled up a galactic map. We need to hide you. He scrolled across planets and moons. Most places were unsafe. Then his eyes stopped on one small symbol. A forgotten mining moon with underground cities lost to time. Nobody searched there anymore. Lyra stared at the screen. She pointed to a spot not far from it. A red star cluster. Ilarian space once, she said softly. Her voice clearer, now still weak but sure. Then she pointed to herself. Last one maybe. Jace looked at her carefully. You're saying you are the last of your kind? She didn't nod, but she didn't deny it either. She stepped back to the corner and sat again, her hands resting in her lap. She began to hum a tune, soft and ancient. The ship lights flickered lightly, as if reacting to her voice. Jace sat across from her. He felt the ship's hum match her melody, like something deep inside the systems recognized the sound. He opened a secure channel and sent a message to an old contact. Not many people Jace trusted, but this one was different. An old war medic named Vena, who once helped smuggle children out of war zones. He sent only 4 words: need safe haven urgent. Then he turned back to Lyra. She had stopped humming. She looked tired again. He offered her a soft blanket, and she curled into it without protest. He sat near the ship's control panel, watching the skies again. Stars blinked above, but danger hid between them. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small object, an old Ilarian crystal, once used for light, once used for healing. He had kept it for luck. Now he placed it beside her gently. It lit up softly as soon as it touched her hand. She opened her eyes. The light danced between her fingers, a connection, not just to the crystal, but to the past. Jace whispered without thinking, you were never trash. You are ancient. You are powerful. You are needed. She smiled faintly, and for the first time her eyes showed something more than fear. They showed memory. They showed hope. The stars above the old planet had started to shift, their light blinking faster, as if warning of what was coming. Inside the ship, Jace stared at the sky monitor, watching the dots moving on the radar. 2 signals, fast, sharp turns. Military-grade engines. He stood quickly and turned toward Lyra, who still sat wrapped in the blanket, her hand resting on the glowing crystal. Her eyes opened slowly, and without a word she already knew. They were coming. He grabbed the flight controls, but paused. No time to warm engines fully. If we run now, we might not make it far. But staying meant risking everything. He turned to her and pointed to the escape pod. If something happens, you go in here. She shook her head firmly and stood, her body small, but her presence larger than the ship's. Metal walls outside the engines of the hunter ships screamed through the cold sky. They circled the old shelter, slow and careful, like wolves sniffing for the hidden prey inside the cockpit. Jace could feel the vibrations through the floor he activated. The defense shields weak, not enough to last more than a few seconds under fire. He had no weapons strong enough to take on Syndicate-class flyers, but he had her. Lyra walked toward the door, her feet silent, her movements graceful. She placed her hand on the panel, and the outer camera zoomed in. The ships had landed black and sharp with red markings. Karn's Syndicate symbols marked on their sides like scars. Figures stepped out wearing armored suits, holding plasma rifles. Jace reached for his sidearm, but Lyra raised a hand. "No," she said. "Let me." He hesitated. "You're still weak." She looked at him, calm and steady. Then she stepped outside into the wind dust, swirled around her feet as the Syndicate agents approached slowly. One of them stepped forward, holding up a scanner. "Target confirmed. High value. Do not damage." Lyra stood still, her hands at her sides, her eyes glowing slightly. The leader aimed his rifle and shouted orders in a rough voice. "You belong to us. Come quietly or suffer." She raised her head. "I belong to no one." Her voice rang like wind through broken stone. They fired, but the energy blasts never reached her. A glowing wall formed in front of her, deflecting the shots. The agents froze, staring in shock. She stepped forward, her feet not touching the ground anymore. Energy wrapped around her like a living wave. Jace watched from the ship, unable to breathe. She was changing, not just using power, becoming power. The ground under the Syndicate agents cracked, rocks lifted and twisted. In the air, their ships shook and alarms blared. Engines overheated. Systems failed. The sky above turned bright as if a second sun had risen. Lyra raised both hands. Her voice spoke in a strange language not heard in centuries. The Syndicate agents screamed, falling to the ground, weapons flying from their hands. Their ships exploded one by one, crashing in fire and smoke. Then silence. The wind blew softly. The stars blinked calmly once more. Lyra fell to her knees, her body shaking, her light fading. Jace ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. Her breath was slow but steady, her eyes open barely. "Untired," she whispered. He nodded, holding her close. "You did good." He carried her back into the ship. The room felt warmer now, or maybe it was her presence. He placed her on the bed and checked her pulse, still strong, but using her power had drained her deeply. Glowing crystal lay on the floor, pulsing like a heart. Jace picked it up and placed it beside her again. She touched it weakly, and it flared bright for a moment, then dimmed. He sat beside her, not speaking. His mind raced. The Syndicate would not stop. Now they knew what she was. Now others would know too. She could not hide anymore. But he also knew something else. She trusted him. She had stepped out not to escape, but to protect him. She had chosen him. Outside, the fires from the fallen ships lit up the night. Inside, the soft hum of the ship returned. The system stable again. The radar clear for now. Just leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. He whispered to himself, "She saved me. I need to save her too." Lyra's breathing slowed and became peaceful. She rested like a child who had no fear. No chains, no cage, just stood and set a new course. They could not stay here, but somewhere out there was still hope. Somewhere out there someone would help. He looked back at her once more, her body still glowing faintly. The last of her kind maybe, but not alone anymore. The ship moved quietly through dark space, stars blinking like old memories in the distance. Jace sat in the pilot seat, but his eyes stayed on the bed behind him, where Lyra lay still, wrapped in her blanket, the glowing crystal near her hand pulsing like it breathed with her. Her power had destroyed 2 Syndicate hunter ships without touch, without weapon, just will. He knew now that she was not only rare, she was ancient and dangerous, but not to him. He checked the shoe level, supplies, maps, escape routes, everything that could give them time. He sent another message to his contact. Vena, still no reply, only static. He looked at Lyra again, her chest rising slowly, her fingers twitching like she was dreaming. He wondered what someone like her dreamed about. Suddenly, the ship's system beeped, red lights blinking across the screen. Another signal, not Syndicate, worse. He tapped the console, reading the code. Central Authority long-range scanner locking on Galactic law enforcement. Not known for mercy, not known for kindness, especially not to humans, who harbor unregistered alien species with high-energy signatures. Stood quickly grabbing supplies. Lyra, he said softly. She opened her eyes without fear, like she had been waiting. He helped her sit up. We have to go. She nodded slowly, then stood on her own, stronger than before. They exited the ship, landing on a mining moon covered in black sand and forgotten tunnels. Jace guided her into the underground system. Old rails and carts still rusted in place. He had read about this place. Once it was used to harvest power crystals, then left to rot when the fuel dried. They moved deeper, light fading, air growing heavy. He found a small room once used for rest. He set up a small heater and placed food on the floor. Lyra sat down silently. He sat across from her, tired but focused. We can't run forever. He looked at her. You're strong, stronger than I've ever seen. But they will keep coming. The Syndicate, the Authority, maybe. Even others. Lyra lifted her hand and opened her fingers. The crystal floated up and spun gently in the air. Her voice came soft. I was hidden for many cycles in sleep, kept away, so they would not find me. But they did. She looked at him. You found me. You saw me. He smiled slightly. I saw someone who needed help. She shook her head. No. You saw someone worth saving. The crystal brightened slowly as she spoke. The walls of the cave shook. Lightly, small stones falling from the ceiling. She placed them on the ground and closed her eyes. The ground pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Jace stood and backed up. Lyra's body began to glow again. Not burning, not wild, but calm and steady. The energy moved around her in slow circles. Symbols formed in the air, glowing with soft light. Jace stared amazed. She opened her eyes. I remember now. They tried to erase my kind. But we are not erased. I carry their light, their voice, their will. The air around her changed. Jace felt it, not heat, not cold, but presence, like something older than stars had entered the room. He stepped forward. Are you all right? She looked at him with clear eyes. I am. But they will not stop. They will chase. They will destroy. Unless we show them. He tilted his head. Show them what? She raised the crystal. That light does not belong to the rich, or the cruel, or the powerful. It belongs to all. She stepped forward and placed her hand on his chest. You saw me. Now I see. Youth energy wrapped around him for a moment. He felt warmth, peace, strength. His cuts healed. His breath deepened. His thoughts cleared. She stepped back, and the light faded slowly. Jace looked at his hands. What did you do? She smiled. I shared. He sat down slowly, unsure of what he felt. It was more than healing. It was connection. Then the sound returned outside the tunnels. A ship landing. Jace stood. She stood beside him. He grabbed his old weapon. She reached for nothing but the crystal. Together, they walked to the tunnel's edge. Above them, the sky turned red from the ship lights. He saw their symbols. Authority, elite squad, armed, ready. They had tracked the energy. They had come prepared for a fight. Jace raised his weapon. Lyra touched his arm. No, let me again. She stepped forward. The elite soldiers raised their guns. Stand down. They shouted. You are sheltering an illegal threat. Lyra raised her hand, and light spilled out, not as a weapon, not as a blast, but as a wave. It passed over them like wind, full of sound and memory. Each soldier froze, their eyes filled with images, stars, ruins, songs, screams, hope. One by one they lowered their weapons, their minds, not their orders, choosing peace. The commander stared. What are you? Lyra answered, I am what you forgot. She turned and walked back to Jace. They did not follow. He looked at her. What now? She looked at the stars. Now we begin. Asterisk. The ship moved through the silent dark, filled with stars stretching far in every direction. But the direction was clear. Now the destination was Earth, the last place Jace wanted to go, and the only place left to try. Lyra sat beside him, her eyes watching the map glowing on the screen, her fingers slowly tracing the lines between stars, between systems, between hopes that died before they could bloom. She was quiet, not from fear, but from knowing what Earth meant. A planet full of rules, borders, weapons, and old pain. It was not built for someone like her. Jace adjusted the controls, his face tight with focus. He had sent one final signal to Vena. Still no answer. Fuel was running low. Choices were Running out as the blue planet came into view, the ship's console lit up with a red message: incoming transmission. Unregistered vessel, please identify or prepare to be boarded. Jace answered using the open channel. This is Captain Jace Rayner requesting emergency landing. Passenger on board is not a threat, but she needs protection. I repeat, she is not a threat. The reply came colder than space itself. Prepare for scan. Any sign of illegal power signature will result in immediate lockdown. Lyra closed her eyes. She breathed slowly. The light around her dimmed till it could no longer be seen. Jace stared at her, surprised. She was hiding herself, folding her energy like cloth. She looked at him without smiling. If they feel me, they will fear me. If they fear me, they will try to control me. The ship descended through clouds, over oceans, over cities shining like stars on the surface. They landed in a secure hangar. Military uniforms waited outside, weapons ready, faces blank. Jace walked out first, hands raised, calm and steady. Behind him, Lyra followed, her cloak hiding most of her face, her steps slow like each one held memory. The officer in charge stepped forward, scanning them both. He paused when he looked at Lyra, not because she was strange, but because something about her felt like it did not belong in this world. You will come with us now for questioning, he said. You will be treated fairly if you cooperate. Jace nodded, but his jaw was tight. They were taken to a secure facility. White walls, cold air, sharp lights. Lyra sat alone in a room with glass on every side. Scientists moved around her like ghosts. They spoke to each other, not to her. Measured her, scanned her, whispered about her. Jess sat in another room, his fists clenched. He answered every question they asked. Where did you find her? What does she want? What can she do? He told the truth. They wrote lies. Finally, he was brought before a panel of officers and scientists. Behind them, screens showed images of Lyra using her power, ships falling, light burning, soldiers frozen in peace. One general leaned forward. You understand this being is a threat. If she turns, if she breaks, we cannot stop her. Jess stood tall. She is not a weapon. She is a person. She is alone, and she is still here because she trusted me not to hand her to another cage. The general shook his head. The galaxy is full of dangerous things. Trust is not enough. Jace stepped closer, his voice low but firm. And yet she chose peace. She had power. She could have destroyed your soldiers, but she showed them who she was. The room fell silent at the same time. Lyra sat still in her glass room. She reached out and placed her hand on the wall. A soft pulse moved through the building, not breaking it, not shaking it, just touching it. Every screen turned white, then filled with images from her mind. Not violence, not war, but stars, her people, her music, her childhood. Then silence. She pulled her hand back and waited. The panel watched, not speaking, not blinking. The general finally spoke. She says more with one touch than most do with words. Still, she cannot stay here freely. Jace's heart dropped. But the general continued. Not unless she has someone to stand with her. Just step forward. Then I stand where she walks. I walk where she is judged. I will be too. There was no applause, no cheering, only a nod. 1 hour later, the glass walls were gone. Lyra stepped out. Jace waited. She looked at him, not with fear, but with something new, belonging. The papers called her mystery. The screens called her a miracle. But to Jace, she was Lyra, the girl they sold for rotten fruit, the girl who had more light than the stars themselves together. They walked through the hallway toward the Earth sky. No more cages, no more hiding. Only the unknown road ahead. The morning on Earth came without warning, soft light pouring through the sky like a quiet promise. As Lyra stood on the edge of the human city, her cloak brushing against the wind, while the people around her paused, not because they knew who she was, but because something about her felt important, like a song they had forgotten long ago. Jace walked beside her, carrying a small bag with nothing more than clothes, food, and one crystal that still pulsed gently with her touch. They had been given papers, names, codes, places where they could stay. But home was not found on paper. Home was something you built. Lyra spoke little in those early days, walking the streets, learning the shapes of voices, the colors of laughter, the sounds of machines. Children pointed at her, some curious, some afraid. She never smiled. Not yet just found them a small place in a quiet part of the city near the edge of an old forest where stars could still be seen clearly. There they lived not as fugitives, not as threats, but as something new. He worked at a local repair bay, fixing old machines. She sat by the window, often her eyes watching birds flying across the sky, her fingers sometimes tracing forgotten symbols in the air. She never told Jace what she saw in her dreams. He never asked, he only watched and waited, because he knew healing took time. One night, as wind blew through the open window, Lyra stood up and walked outside, her feet touching grass like it was made of stars. Jace followed slowly, watching her raise her hand to the moon. The crystal on her wrist began to glow again, but softer now, warmer. She turned to him. "They are calling me." He didn't speak. He didn't have to. She placed the crystal on the ground, and light began to rise. A map formed in the air, symbols, rotating lines forming paths. A beacon. "They are not all gone," she whispered. "I feel them far." But Olivia stepped closer. "You want to go?" She looked at the stars. "I want to bring them home." He nodded. "Then we go." It took weeks. Finding the right ship, gathering what they needed, explaining without really explaining. But Earth had seen her now. The people had begun to understand. She was not a danger. She was a bridge. One evening, before they left the city, children gathered outside their home, holding small lights in their hands. "A gift to guide your way." Lyra stepped out and knelt before them, her hand raised gently. A boy asked, "Are you an angel?" She looked at him. "I am someone who was once lost. Now I am found." The ship rose slowly into the sky, the city glowing below like a memory. Jay stood at the controls, Lyra beside him, her eyes closed, her hand resting on the crystal. They passed stars that whispered, moons that remembered, nebulas that sang old songs, and then a signal weak. But there a broken world, half in shadow, half in flame, and on it, a voice. Lyra placed her hand on the console. "I know this voice." They landed near a cave. Inside were ruins, carvings, and one figure, small, thin, afraid, like she had been. Lyra stepped forward. Slowly the figure looked up, eyes wide. The same glow, the same blood. A chill. Jace watched from the entrance. He knew this was not the end. This was a beginning. They returned to Earth, not with one, but with many. The world watched as more arrived, children. Survivors, each one carrying a piece of light. Earth did not run. Earth opened. Lyra stood before the world one final time. She spoke not as a weapon, not as a relic, but as a voice of what had been forgotten. "We were sold for scraps, for broken things, for rotten fruit. But we are not waste, we are not trash, we are alive." The crowd stood still. Then one by one, they stepped forward, not with fear, but with welcome. Jace looked at her from the side. He remembered the cage, the market, the fire, the words. She's nothing they had said. Now she was everything. He took her hand, and together, they walked forward, not as human and alien, but as family.